Welcome to the first episode of Wearing Pants Again. I'm Lauren Siegal. Wearing Pants Again is a podcast about identity, creativity, and the courage it takes to show up for your work, for yourself, and for what matters. I am in the process of figuring out what that looks like in my own life, and I'm curious to talk about it with others. Each week, I'll be having conversations with artists, makers, and people navigating their creative paths to talk about the process, the doubts, the wins, and everything in the middle. I couldn't think of a more perfect person to interview for my first episode. It is somebody who I've known my whole life and have pretty much looked up to for as long as I can remember. And that person is my older brother, Evan. Evan Siegal is a filmmaker, animator, and musician based in Los Angeles, working at the intersection of immersive technology and emotional storytelling. His work blends surrealism with sincerity, exploring memory, grief, identity, and transformation through virtual worlds, generative tools, and experimental narratives. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be the first guest.
So tell me a little bit about what inspired you to pursue filmmaking.
So when I was in high school, I was in my high school marching band, and we're originally from Texas. And for those who don't know, Texas high school marching band is like a cut above a lot of other places in the country. It gets very intense, very militaristic. Like you have to invest a lot of time, a lot of energy. And that was my passion in high school, and it was like my whole world, and I was so obsessed with it. And um, I found out that there was an officer position in the leadership team, and that position was to document the marching season and showcase, all the hard work we put into this competitive show that we take around the state and around the country. And it's a good way to reminisce at the end of the year. And I remember when I was a freshman and even a sophomore, the end of the year would come. We'd be at our end of the year party for band, and we'd watch this video, and the people who were making it were just totally phoning it in. It didn't feel like they were trying, or I overheard one of the people who was doing it. She was like, "Oh, I just had to cook this up a couple nights before. I was up all night, blah blah blah." And I remember thinking, I was like, I don't know anything about filmmaking. I don't know anything about shooting and editing videos, but I feel like we put in so much work that like this deserves more effort and attention. um, so when I was a junior, I decided I wanted to throw my hat in the ring because, this was going to be a memory that we were all going to take with us for the rest of our lives. So I decided, even though I don't know what I'm doing, I would at least put in the effort to try and make it as great as I could. So I used a shitty camcorder and just spent a lot of time learning how to shoot and edit. And I was putting so much like attention into this thing. um, and since I had this guaranteed audience of the entire band and whatever, I knew that this had to be good. So I invested all this time and effort, and on the other side of it, when I finished the product and showed it, usually the band end of the year video was like a 20-minute thing, and I made mine like an hour 20 like full length movie. And I remember showing it at the banquet. Usually it was like, oh, we show the video, you watch, you clap, you move on. We watched the entire thing. And I remember at the end, like the whole audience got up and there was a standing ovation. Everyone was so excited about how much fun it was to watch all of that. And, I ended up getting elected to do it the following year. And I just fell in love with like, having the camera in my hands and being able to edit and tell this story. And hearing people say that this was like so meaningful to them and that they were gonna remember these videos for the rest of their lives, I think that resonated with me. So I wanted to find a way to do that with everything that I do.
I love that. And you probably already know this, but for anybody who might be listening, I basically, well, Evan, I copied in your footsteps our whole childhood. So I decided to join band as well. And then I also, well, I saw that you were historian, so then I decided to be historian. And it really was fun. Because I feel like I got to combine, my interest in photography and then making videos and um, so after you were historian, was it during that time that you decided to pursue going to film school? Like what kind of made you decide that you wanted to pursue it as your career?
Yeah, I would say it was during that time. I originally was like taking a lot of like really random electives like at school. Like there was an accounting class that like 10 people were taking. But I remember I just really liked the teacher and I was like interested in it. It felt like a fun kind of like puzzle solving kind of a thing. And I remembered hearing at one point like accountants can make good money. So I was like, oh, I'll just do that. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with my life. So I took all these accounting classes and I was like, oh, I'll just go to a business school and major in accounting. And that was like my plan. But, as time got closer to submit college applications and things like that, I was like, oh man, like, wouldn't it be awesome if I just tried to go for something like wild instead and like try to go to like a film school or something and try to make something happen. And I ended up pivoting last minute and doing that.
And so I guess kind of jumping forward to where we are now, you have taught yourself some really cool new technologies like Unreal Engine, which I know a lot of people find intimidating. So what made you want to learn that, and how did you go about teaching yourself?
Yeah. So I graduated school, me and some friends teamed up and we made like a little production company together. And our goal was to make commercials and music videos and try to find a way making money doing that. And it was going well for a while. And, we started to hit a point where, our ultimate dream was to pivot into making feature films, like full length movies that you would see in like a theater or something. And, a lot of the ideas that I come up with and like that I would write like scripts for or, jot up, is very like world building, imaginative, surreal, like larger than life, all these things. So, me and this group of guys, we were writing scripts and up with these ideas, and we had opportunities to pitch to real production companies and real people in Hollywood, like these ideas. And I started to notice a trend every single time we would do this, where we would pitch the idea, pitch the script, show them all these like images and all these drawings we'd made, like how we'd thought out all these ideas. And we kept getting the same feedback, which was cool idea, love the story, love the script, but for your first thing, no one's ever going to fund this. It's too world buildy. It's going to cost too much money. They're like, why don't you try just making it like an indie, blah, 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 blah instead. And I just remembered being frustrated, continuing to hear that. I was like, oh, if you like the idea, why don't you just take a chance on it? Or, and I quickly just got very frustrated with that. And I'm the kind of person where if I want something done right, I'm going to do it myself. I don't like waiting for people to give me opportunities. I like to just find a way to build things on my own. And I graduated school around the pandemic, or not around the pandemic, literally during the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And I remember, everyone was starting these like hobbies, like I'm locked inside, I'm gonna start doing this new skill, I'm gonna start teaching myself. And I had a lot of friends who were posting about them teaching themselves 3D art. And I remember there was one guy in particular who went to my school, and I was looking at the stuff he was making in a program called Blender. Um, and I was just blown away. I was like, oh my God, this looks so freaking cool. And he's making all these crazy scenes and all these cool cinematic shots. I was like, and he's just doing it from his computer for free because all of these softwares are free. And I just remember my mind was blown. I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. Like I could just make I could just make the movies that I'm thinking of from my computer. I don't have to like beg somebody to let me do it. So after finding out that all these softwares are free and that you can practically learn through tutorials on YouTube, I tried to teach myself Blender at first, and it was a complete failure. I got overwhelmed and stressed out, and I gave up very quickly. And I was very preoccupied with this company that I mentioned, starting this up with my friends. But as the years went on, we slowly lost business. Slowly, came time to where we had to close the doors. We just weren't getting enough clients, and I needed to make money. Um, and I decided what a better time to try this again, with a different program maybe. So I started learning Unreal Engine through YouTube, and I actually, did it right this time and took my time instead of trying to bite off more than I could chew. And it ended up turning into this amazing, crazy new career for me.
I think that's so awesome and kind of an example of how you don't need to necessarily go to school to learn a lot of these skills. I'm sure film school was probably valuable in a lot of areas, but would you say all the stuff that you're doing now is mostly things that you've taught yourself?
I mean, as far as skills, yes, but I still see some value in having gone to school. Like I met a lot of people, made a lot of like good connections and friends, and the people if you that you go to like any sort of art school with, those are the people you're probably going to be working with for the rest of your life. So, knowing a lot of people, just doing things in entertainment is definitely like helps you too.
So I wanted to ask about um, one of the things that you and I have talked about is when you were building your, just the whole process of building out your videography portfolio, when you were starting up your company. Can you talk about how you would, some of the projects that you worked on, and kind of maybe they weren't necessarily paid gigs, but you had a vision, and tell me a little bit about that whole process.
Yeah, I mean, when I was first starting out, I realized like everybody has a portfolio, and with the kinds of things you want to do in creative fields, people don't really care what school you went to, nor should they. They just want to be like, if this is what you want to do, like, oh, you want to shoot and edit music videos, like, let me see a music video, like, let me see if you're good at it. And, in a way, I really liked that challenge because I didn't like the security of being like, oh, I went to school. I can just go walk in, it's not like an office job where it's like, I have a degree from blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm qualified to do this now. It's like you can have a degree from wherever the hell, but if you are not good at what you do in the filmmaking world, no one's going to hire you. So, when I was starting out this company, me and my friends, we realized, okay, we need to start shooting stuff, just anything that's good, even though we're not going to have access to budgets. And, being in marching band back in Texas, I had a lot of friends from marching band who went on to pursue a career in music and tried to be in bands or have like singer-songwriter careers, on their own. So I was like, oh, what better people to just volunteer to make free music videos for? Because my thought process was like, okay, we have a camera, that's all we really need. And if I'm offering to make a music video for free for these people, like the exchange will be like I get to do whatever I want, like to build my portfolio, and you get a free music video. Like it's a win-win. So me and my buddies that we were starting this production company with, we packed up our car, drove from California back home to Texas. We were staying in my mom's bedroom in her apartment, and we went out every single day for I think a week and a half or 2 weeks, and we just filmed a bunch of music videos for a bunch of different people that I knew. We shot 3 music videos total in that time, in 2 different cities in Texas, and yeah, we came back and we had 3 music videos. And we had a little bit of a scheme going because, part of the other avenue we were trying to tackle was getting commercial work. And, I couldn't figure out how to get like a interesting brand to talk with us because we didn't want to do basic stuff. We wanted to do things in like the avant-garde, like fashion world and things that were like more like trippy or interesting. So we had this idea where we were like, we should shoot a spec commercial for a high fashion brand. For anyone who doesn't know, a spec commercial is basically like you can go out and shoot an idea on your own, and you can pick a brand and make like a fake commercial that you can use to show commercial agencies or brands that you're capable of making a good commercial. People do this all the time. So our idea was to make a spec commercial for YSL Saint Laurent, Now, obviously, we did not have money for a budget or anything crazy. So what we did was we had this concept of it was a single shot of this jacket on fire, and it would play back in reverse. So in the commercial, you'd see the jacket on fire, then the fire would fizzle out, and a model would come in and put the jacket on. So what we did was we went to Goodwill, got a $10 blazer. We went to Home Depot and built a little hanger to put on it to set it on fire. We did all this practically, probably illegally, on a beach in California. And we went at night, lit the thing on fire, filmed it, did the whole shebang, and it turned out really cool. And we just lied and went to all these brands and said, "Yeah, we made this commercial for Saint Laurent." We didn't tell them it was a spec commercial. And it turned out so good, people just believed it. Nobody did their due diligence, and that's how we started getting hired for stuff.
So, can you tell me a little bit, for people who might not know exactly what you do, can you explain the different VR, AR kind of technologies that you're primarily working with these days?
Yeah, so nowadays I'm working less with things you watch on a traditional screen and more of like things you would watch with a headset on your head or, looking through filters in a phone or something like that. So the blanket term for all these technologies is called XR, like extended realities, if you will, like worlds that exist beyond our own. Obviously the one most people know is VR, which is a headset is on your head and you're in an experience, either tethered to a computer or not. There's AR, which is augmented reality, which most of us probably know through like Snapchat filters on your phone where you hold up in selfie mode and little dog ears pop up. It's basically virtual worlds mixed with our own through these screens. And then there's mixed reality, which is often done with a VR headset on, where using the pass-through cameras on the headset, you can see virtual sort of animations and storytelling, like in your room or wherever the place you have the headset on in.
How long after you taught yourself these tools did you start getting paid gigs?
Um, it took one successful project that I worked on with an old partner, and that got into some festivals, and that made it pretty easy to jump into getting work. Um, but yeah, I think it took a little bit of a different path for me with this because, when I first started getting those jobs, I felt super intimidated because I was like, a lot of these people on these teams that I'm joining, they are all traditionally trained. They probably know more than me. What if they ask me to do something that I don't know how to do? Like, what am I going to do? And I just kind of had a trial by fire situation where sometimes like I would get a job and they'd be like, "Hey, do you know how to do this?" And I'd just be like, "Yeah, yeah, of course, of course." I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. And oftentimes I would just wait until they would ask me to do something and I would just be at home like Googling like how do I blah 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 and try to just make it look good. So it was like a fake it till you make it situation for sure.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your short film called I Want to Go Home, Please. Um, well, I'll let you talk a little bit maybe about the why you created that film. But specifically, why I also bring this up is when I watched it, it, well, for one, it elicited a lot of emotions in me, and I just thought it was so cool how you were able to create this short film just entirely out of your imagination. So can you tell me a little bit about the inspiration behind that project?
For sure. Yeah, so that short film is made entirely using AI from a company called Runway. And the reason I got into all that is they periodically host these contests called Gen 48, which basically they give you some very like vague guidelines and some prompts, and they give you 48 hours to make a short film within those guidelines. And I saw that contest. I was like, oh, that sounds fun. I've got nothing going on this weekend. I'll do it. And so I made that short film in 2 days, edited it together, made all the shots, sound designed it, yada yada yada, and I ended up submitting it, and it ended up getting the people's one of the People's Choice Awards in the contest. And it's kind of crazy because ever since then, I've been kind of cemented in this like AI world, and Runway has gone on to become a very big company as of today. Like they have partnerships like Lionsgate and all of these things. So, it was an early step in this new sort of budding medium.
What did the process of making that short film teach you?
It taught me that, it actually really gave me a lot of respect for AI storytelling as a medium. And I know it's like super controversial. Everyone thinks AI is going to replace filmmakers and artists, and I don't really think that way. I think it's a like the same way the like a film camera, like a movie camera didn't replace like photography. I don't think AI is going to replace real filmmaking. I think it's a cool way to democratize people who want to tell stories and don't have access to Hollywood resources. And I don't think it's meant to replace. I think it's meant to supplement. I think it's meant to be its own category of entertainment. And I think it's really cool. Like even if you use it to like, I don't know, turn your dreams into a video clip or something. Like it just allows people to hold more creative tools in their hands from their homes. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I just think all that stuff is really interesting.
When you are starting a project, I guess I want to ask a little bit about your creative process. Do you usually have the whole vision mapped out, or does it kind of take shape during the whole editing process?
More often than not, it takes shape as the process goes on. I've kind of learned over time, like just with like specific, I need to like leave room for like serendipity, just like letting things happen and letting surprises be surprises. Cause I learned that like when I try to make something based off of a script or, like a super hard set, rule or guideline, it kind of limits me a lot. And I find myself being stuck versus like when I naturally just let something evolve and change as it kind of comes to. Like for that short film that you're referencing, I Want to Go Home Please. Like I first in the 48 hours I had to make that, I only spent probably 24 hours making that film. The first 24 hours I was making a completely different film that just wasn't really working. So I scrapped it and started over and made that. So
One of the things that you and I have also talked about is, well, you've always told me that you don't need fancy gear to make great work. Can you explain to me your mindset behind that?
yeah, I mean, you know, I I went to school, like film school in an environment with a lot of people who they had like a lot of fancy, flashy toys and things. And I remember I would look at some of their films and be like, but the story sucks, like, or the lighting's bad or all these things. And that what I took a class with a professor who was talking specifically about, cinematography, but also the way it combines with the story. It's like, okay, if you have a good story that's universal, it can be in any medium. But if you're doing it with film, and you want to shoot it and make it look good, you only need three things like framing, staging, and lighting. Whatever. Can't you could be using your phone or you could be using a $1 million camera. It doesn't matter. Like framing, staging, lighting. That's it. And I remember like once I started to think about that and I would mess around with like camcorders or like my phone, I was like, oh, like that's completely true. It really doesn't matter what, you know. And sort of every project that I work on now, I really try to employ those principles for sure.
I also wanted to talk a little bit about social media. In this day and age, everybody is kind of on social media. We're always, well, not always, but we're consuming a lot of content. Um, how much do you think that that affects your own creative ideas and the kind of work that you make?
I think it's a net positive personally. I think it's really cool to constantly be inspired by what other people are doing. Like I on my Instagram page, I literally have a saved gallery and I call it Film Inspo. Like anytime I see something cool that somebody made, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to remember that. Like that's super inspiring. Because back before social media, if you wanted to be inspired, you had to go to like a physical place, um, like a museum or something like that. And those are still amazing. Like I'm not saying social media has replaced museums, but it like again, it's about like accessibility and democratization. Like if I want to be inspired from home, I can. If I want to go to a museum, I also can, you know. Um, and yeah, it's a way for everybody to share their work, show their voice. And yeah, I think it's been a really cool thing. I've been able to meet a lot of people through social media and connect with like-minded artists. And, it's been a great way to get feedback on things that I'm making. So overall, I think it's pretty good.
I know that well, personally sometimes struggle with, um, you see so many people, there's a lot of short form content out there, and then you see all these people going viral and by doing specific types of videos or following trends. Do you ever find it hard to separate what you want to create from what you see everybody else making?
Mm, I find that when I see what's like resonating with other people, I try to understand like what it is, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you're making stuff in a bubble and no one's seeing it, it's like the whole like tree, if the tree falls in the forest, doesn't make a sound if no one's around to hear it. Um, and, I do believe that you should make things that you're interested in and not try to appease other people, but also it's like good to learn like, oh, if this is going viral or if a lot of people are liking this, like what's resonating? Is there like some universal message that it's tapping into? Is it just really funny? Is it really shocking? Like what is it? And I think those principles have marinated their way into like actual like movies that have won Oscars. Like I think a really good example is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like that won Best Picture, and that movie is just full of like ridiculous, crazy shit. I think that's a movie that works for this generation, people who just want craziness, fast pace, over the top, which is like representative of like what's going on in social media. So if you make a like I'm a big fan of like slow, what a lot of people would call boring movies too. And there's just really not a place for those today, which is sad, but part of being an artist, I think, is like knowing the times that you live in and being aware of like what people are consuming, not to appease them, but to understand them.
So, do you ever feel like you need to take a break from social media to protect your own creativity and your own, creative vision?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just like with anything in life, it's all about a balance. Like I'm not gonna say social media is littered with horrible things. Like like I could talk on and on about how terrible for society and this entire world that Twitter is. Like Twitter is a useless like garbage disposal of a social media app. Um and those things can affect your mental health, even if you're like, oh, I just use Instagram to look at art. Like, I'm someone who deals with like, depression. Like, I'm not above comparing myself to other people's successes and failures and things like that. So, it's like a healthy dose of anything, right? Like, chocolate tastes good. If you eat a bunch of chocolate, you're going to get big and you might die, which is hyperbolic, but like, the point still stands. It's like just a healthy dose of everything.
Yeah. And I guess for me personally, it is also, yeah, it's just not trying to work on not worrying so much about what people think, and like how people will perceive what I post, because I'm trying to remind myself, like I can't control at all what people think.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, because I've had instances where like I'll show something to someone and I want them to like it. Like I I want with every bone in my body them to like it. And sometimes that just doesn't happen. Sometimes they're just like, that was good, or I didn't like it at all. And that's something that's been hard for me to get used to. And oftentimes I'll remind myself, like I'll think of big artists, like even just musicians, like people not in the same field as me. Like think of like Taylor Swift, for example, like super talented, super successful. Like I'm not the biggest fan of her music, but I admire her talents and things like that. But it doesn't matter what I think about her music. She's the most popular musician in the world. Like billions of people love her. So it's like things like that. Like even the person on top of an industry has a bunch of people who, not myself included, I think she's fine, but like there are people who just say like her music sucks, and who cares what those people think? Like she has billions of people validating how great her music is. So,
Do you ever feel nervous when sharing your work and putting it out there? And if so, how do you deal with that vulnerability?
um, I don't nowadays, because if I feel good about something, I'll put it out. I used to deal with that a lot because I used to think like, oh, if not everybody loves it, then I don't want to know about it. Like I was so scared of someone being like, oh, I don't like this, because I would be like, oh, my art is an extension of myself. If you don't like my movie, then you don't like me, or you're criticizing me, which is not true. Um, but that was definitely a big obstacle for me to overcome. Yeah.
How do you find a balance between creating for your clients or your job and then creating just for yourself?
I always make sure that I'm taking on freelancing jobs because I work as a freelancer now. I will only take jobs that allow me flexibility to work on my own stuff in my free time. I will never take a job that's going to consume my entire life force and energy. Like I like working on jobs. It's like, hey, here's the scope of work. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna deliver it to you. And then we both move on with our lives. Last year I got offered a job at Apple on their Vision Pro team, and I turned it down because I was like, I want to be a director. That's my dream in life. And the minute I take that job, that dream is over, because I'm gonna be full time, just focused on that. It's like a big commitment, it's a big salary. And I said no, because that's not what I want to do. And yeah, it takes a lot of persistence. And it's one of those things where I tell people that story about the Apple thing, and people are like, wow, like that, you must feel really cool about that. And it's like in some way, yeah, but in some way I'm like, did I just make a really dumb mistake? Um, but I don't know. I think there's a certain degree with like finding, like knowing you need that balance is like having a certain like narcissistic like belief in yourself that that's worth doing. So maybe it's maybe it's based on nothing. I don't know, but you know.
Hey, I respect it. Um, I also wanted to ask about your music, as you've been putting out music under the name of Thought Cabinet. So, can you tell me what made you decide to start putting your music out there?
Yeah, I mean, I was at a point like I started producing like 3 years ago. And I remember I was at a point where I was like feeling like I just been doing a lot of filmmaking stuff, and I was like, I just need a medium to do stuff in that doesn't matter. I was like, I don't really want to be a musician, but I like making music. I did band for 7 years. Like I'm very familiar with music. I was doing music before I was doing film, really. So I was like, okay, like this will be a fun thing to learn and just do as like a throwaway, like I don't really care where it goes sort of a thing. Just do it just for fun. And that kind of escalated a lot, and I learned so much about music production and producing and making like electronic music. And it's kind of a weird serendipity, because now I'm at a point where my career as a 3D artist and like VR filmmaker is now intersecting with my career as a musician, which I didn't really foresee it going this way, but that is just how it turned out. Um,
Can you
it's
talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, so it's resulted in really weird, interesting things. Like, for example, last year I started as the lead 3D artist on the Coachella innovation team. And, I was in charge of a lot of like promo materials, 3D renderings, things for like activations on site, on some of the stages and things like that. I remember one of the activations, there was an LED wall in there and they needed like this looping animation that I was making for it. And the activation at the last moment, like a week before the festival, before I was going to go on site and like be working, they were like, "Hey, these people, they're kind of out of money, they're kind of out of budget, but they want some like looping, like ambient music to play in the booth." And my boss was like, "I remember seeing something about you posting on Instagram that you make music. Do you want to just take a crack at this?" They weren't offering me extra money, or anything, but I was like, I mean, in a weird backwards way, I could say I had my officially at Coachella, which is kind of true, but also kind of not. But I was like, I'll take it. So I just made these like super ambient kind of loopy things or whatever. And then when I went to the place on site, like that booth, just to check it out and see my work, I was like, oh wait, that's the song that I made. And they were playing it. Um,
So you've played at Coachella?
in the most backwards, unofficial way, yes. Um, but yeah, now I'm interested in making like VR music experiences. I'm actually working on one with a very close friend of mine. We've been producing this album together, and we're gonna bring it to life in VR, which is gonna be
Is that the VR techno album movie?
yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so um I have a good friend. His name is Mahir. His artist name is Sonic, Sonic. Um, and he went to music school and he's just super talented producer. And we had a lot of mutual friends from school, and post graduation we kind of just started hanging out, and he taught me basically everything he knows about producing. Like I learned everything I did from him, and while we were hanging out we were just like, oh, like we both like making music, like let's just make an album together. So we came up with this whole like storyline and this whole thing about this like nightclub in the afterlife that people go to party at before they're reincarnated, and that's like the name of the album, and it's also the way the songs unfolded. It became like this whole big thing, and now we're in production. The album is done, and we're making it into a VR experience. And this week, actually, we're working with a character artist who is making digital doubles of he and I. So we are going to be in the VR experiences ourselves, which is pretty funny. But yeah,
Do you have to have a headset to watch that?
to get the real experience, yes, yes.
Okay, well, sounds really cool. I'm excited to see it.
Thanks. It should be interesting.
I don't want to end on a negative note, but I did want to ask. I'll ask a fun question after this, but do you ever face creative blocks in any of your artistic endeavors? And if so, how do you handle those?
I mean, yeah, I think anyone who is an artist, if someone's an artist and says they never have blocks, they're probably lying, or they're not a real artist. Like every artistically minded person gets stuck. Every artistically minded person gets frustrated, feels like the idea sucks at a certain point, and that's like a normal part of the process. Um, and I remember, I believe, I don't want to misquote, I think it was Rick Rubin who said something like this. I don't think it was verbatim, but it's something to the effect of time spent away from a project is often as or more important than the time you spend on a project. And once I finally understood what that meant, it really, really helped me because I'm the kind of person where, I'd be sitting here like this scene is not working. Like, why is this not working? Like, God damn it. Like, what do I do? And then once I learned to step away from a project, I'd be like on a walk or just out in the middle of nowhere. I'd be like, literally the light bulb goes off. I was like, wait, I know what to do. And I would feel like compelled to like rush home. I was like, wait, I have this new idea to fix this, blah, 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 blah. So, um, I've derived a lot of inspiration for the artistic process from Rick Rubin and the stuff he's talked about, where it's like, you need to let the muse come to you. Like if you try to make the muse and force it, like you're you're laying down this heavy hand and it's not really getting you to where you need to be. Um, so learning to be patient with things, knowing that you're not gonna figure it out overnight. It's never gonna be perfect the first time around. Like learning the art of patience and the art of willingness to change and take notes and take criticism. It's all a process of getting good at that stuff.
You were actually the one who told me about The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which I read and then reread. But part of the practice in that book is the morning pages where you write 3 pages longhand every day, just whatever comes to your mind. And I was also looking into trying to learn about songwriting. And one of the things that somebody that I read was saying is to just write every day just to make it a practice, rather than like just waiting for an idea to come to you. It's almost like you just have to go through the act of doing it. Do you ever experience that, like where you're just getting yourself to create even if you have no idea where it's going?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like a big part of creation itself is like, letting things authentically happen and unfold is like a really beautiful part of the process, I think. Sometimes like you'll sit down with certain intentions, like when I sit down and open like Unreal Engine, I'll start like sketching some stuff. Like I'll sit down being like, okay, I'm gonna try this, and then I'll try a bunch of other things. I'm like, wait, no, this is a better idea, or oh, this looks better. I like this better. You know, and just there's something in everybody's subconscious. Maybe this is like some spiritual BS, but I genuinely believe this that like it's like the invisible hand that guides you, and you can't talk to it, but it talks through you. And that's like the muse or the thing that's like, I can't figure this out. And then a week later, you're walking through the park with your headphones in, and the right song plays, and you see that thing, just whatever it might be, and it just gives you that idea. Like that's that like invisible hand. And sometimes it talks to you regularly, sometimes it takes breaks and you don't hear from it for months, but it's there in every single person. And learning how to nurture it and have that balance with it, I think is just a part of being like an artist.
And in your industry, in the film industry, and I would say in the creative field in general, there can be a lot of rejection. So how do you kind of stay motivated when you face rejection or any setbacks?
I would be lying if I said I'm perfect with this, because rejection still gets to me. I'm not above getting rejected. Like it hurts. And I think the biggest key that I've learned is like having a good support system around you, and like people who can like keep encouraging you, and people who can give you honest feedback. Because it's a tough thing when you're submitting to film festivals, because like these really big popular ones, like thousands of people will submit to them, and it's up to two people, usually like two programmers or like just a small handful of people, to determine whether or not your movie belongs there. And the analogy I always like tell people is like, have you ever gone to see a movie with like, I don't know, a group of five friends, and you leave the movie theater? Like the odds that every single person loved the movie, that doesn't usually happen. Um, and if it does, usually there are some parts that like people didn't like and other parts that people did like. Like it's just so wildly subjective. I know that I'll leave the movie theaters sometimes with friends, and these are like big, commercial movies that are in all the theaters all over the country, all over the world. And I'll walk out and be like, "What the hell was that garbage?" And my friend's like, "That was amazing. I loved it." And like that dichotomy right there, it's like imagine like your film in the hands of like two programmers, and maybe like you could show it to 30 people, like 30 people in your circle, and everyone's like, "This movie's the best." And you show it to those two programmers, and like, I don't like it. Next. Like that's just the game, and you just have to keep going until something hits.
So I just have a couple more questions, um, if that's okay. If you could go back and, well, obviously starting from where you are now, when you look back, if you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, who's just about to embark on the creative journey, what would you say?
I would say trust the process and just don't hold any expectations, because if I took a time machine even back like 5 years ago when I was starting my company and I was like, hey, in 5 years, you're not going to be shooting anything. You're going to be doing VR and 3D art and making things in Unreal Engine. I would have been like, wait, what? I thought I was going to be doing like I had a completely different projection of my route 5 years ago. And it is to say it is 180 is nothing short of a or it's not an exaggeration. It's like it has completely it's completely 180. I'm still doing what I love, but it's manifested itself in a very different way than I ever could have imagined. So trust the process. Don't let yourself be bogged down by your expectations, and just be open-minded and explore life like a curious child would, and you will be surprised at what happens.
And do you have any other advice in general for somebody who wants to pursue a creative path?
Um, I would say just try stuff. Just if you're even remotely interested, try it. Like the amount of people that I know, they're like, "Oh man, I would love to do this, but I can't, or I don't have the time." Like you have the time. Think about the amount of time you spend scrolling Instagram or TikTok or messing around. Like there are very few people in this world that I would say don't have time to like try something like at least a few times a week. So if you have time, like the internet is full of free and available resources to like learn how to do a number of things. Like the world is all of our oysters. We all have access to ChatGPT in some way or fashion. You can always ask it for help. I ask ChatGPT for help every single day with the stuff that I do, and I learn every day. Um, and yeah, the world's everybody's oyster, and it's just up to you to do with it what you will.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being my first guest and for taking the time to talk with me today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you would like to keep up with Evan and his projects, I will leave his information in the show notes.